Welcome to a very special episode of the Disinfo Detox. This episode is part of a series of episodes we call Eyes on Education, which explore various issues having to do with education, especially around the utilization of surveillance technology in the classroom. For these Eyes on Education episodes, I'm always joined by my co-host, co-author, and co-conspirator, Allison Butler of University of Massachusetts Amherst. And today, we welcome Adam Bessie, author of Going Remote, to the Disinfo Detox. Adam Bessie, welcome to this Eyes on Education episode of the Disinfo Detox. I want to get right into this book, Going Remote. I was really struck when reading it, how you explored this intersection of technology, education, and this sense of isolationism amongst so many students and faculty. So for some of the folks who are listening or watching the podcast who haven't yet read your book, and they definitely should pick up a copy. It's fantastic. Could you give us a brief summary of what the book covers?
Yeah, sure. The best thing to do, I would say, is go to my website, adambessie.com, and you could just read one of the chapters, and you'll, as we see with comics, showing is better than telling. That's a good aphorism in English as well. But the story itself, I started on March 13th, 2020, like literally the day that my college shut down. The way that I was processing it was live, just writing about that feeling of going remote. Now, the idea of going remote obviously is a technological experience, but it is also the remoteness of our relationships and the ways in which the technology and technocratic systems in which public education works create remoteness rather than community. The book itself, it's a memoir, it's a comic, not a funny comic. It's quite dark, as you said, but I think hopeful. It entwines my roles as a professor at a community college in the San Francisco Bay Area. Also, my experience as a parent with a child who was then in second grade and dealing with that. My wife is also a teacher, so it was about her experience, both of our experience navigating these remote platforms altogether. And then also there's my own experience as a cancer survivor and patient, all entwining together as a way to help record this pivotal period, which clearly set us on the path we're on now towards increasing sort of technicalization and corporatization, and hopefully make readers themselves think about how they've changed and the changes that they would like to make moving forward.
Can you tell us what sparked your interest in, aside from the obvious of it being COVID, but what sparked your interest in writing about and working on remote education?
Yeah, well, I had never taught remote before, and my intention was to never teach remote. I love in-person teaching. I love the vibe of the classroom, the energy, as I talk about in the book, sort of the power in the room, that electric jazz-like vibe that you get. It doesn't happen every day, maybe every week or maybe once a month, but there's a moment when the conversation sort of is not just you and the students, but this sort of organic entity. And it really, for anyone that's had that experience in a class, and I'm sure Nolan, you and Allison have had this at some point, it's really delightful and why we get into teaching. And at that juncture, I just felt like, how would I even do that? Now, I know there are professors that get a lot out of remote teaching and that are very good at creating that dynamic, but I got into the profession for the human craft. And so for me, once we went online in that emergency mode, it was like a complete sense of vertigo. Like all of the tools that I had as a teacher now were taken away. It would be as if you suddenly lost a number of your sensory organs. And so I felt like, how would I even do this? Now, beyond that, I'm a big science fiction reader and teacher. And that semester, I was teaching about science fiction. I was teaching a story from 1909 by E.M. Forrester called The Machine Stops. It's depicted partially in the second chapter. And this prescient work is like early AI literature, 1909 again. And it's about a world in which everyone is in their own little cell. hooked up to a machine that feeds them, clothes them if they need it, and kills them if they petition the machine to let them be killed, believe it or not. And they talk to other people only through screens. They don't call them screens because that term didn't exist, but visors. And they're in this like literal echo chamber, all stuck in there. And so just weeks before we went remote, I was literally teaching that work about people stuck in these sort of chambers in cells, only communicating digitally and putting their complete faith in an automated AI system. And so there was this personal sense of vertigo and loss, and also this, spidey sense of how did this happen? The synchronicity that like I just taught about this, and now we're inside of the book that I taught. I got to write this and communicate this experience. And I remember in class, and I brought that up to the assembled black screens. I'm like, God, isn't that ironic? I thought I would get a laugh. That was me thinking I could get laughs on Zoom, and there were no laughs, either because they were playing Fortnite or sleeping or smoking weed or somewhere else, or the joke wasn't funny. It could be that too.
Something else that struck me about your book that I think listeners will be impressed by. You were one of the earliest folks, I think, who recognized that COVID gave an opportunity to accelerate something that was already happening in education, particularly with kind of technology. And do you want to talk a little bit about that? I'll let you say, but how you talk about in the book, how COVID kind of accelerated some trends, and you talk about your personal journey as a teacher, seeing these trends accelerate. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, I think if you haven't been fully within the education system and you just drop in, this would just feel decontextualized, just sudden, like, oh, we're all on screens, and Silicon Valley has sort of completely colonized the classroom. But, back in 2011, I wrote an essay. I can't even remember what publication. It was about replacing teachers with holograms, right? Because the holograms could be programmed, they'd be more efficient, they wouldn't do anything wrong. A couple of years later, in 2013, I wrote a follow-up to that for Truth Out called Automated Teaching Machine, ATM. That we dispense knowledge like an ATM dispenses money. And these things that we're noticing, some of it had to do with actual technological capacities. So there was a charter school, I don't know if it exists still, called Rocket Ship Charter School. And they were excited that they were able to replace a couple human teachers by having their automated system. So it was like an early effort. Just a couple of weeks ago, I heard a story about how Arizona permitted a new charter school that's totally AI with some human assistance. So this was sort of an early version of that. And they were very proud that they could provide, again, personalized learning, which is such a Orwellian doublespeak because it's the complete absence of any person involved in the system. Now, these trend lines didn't just have to do with the actual technological capacities. And quite frankly, I didn't think within my lifetime I would see some of these things actually occurring, like the AI actually doing some of the things it can do. For example, I just got an email from Duke University that for a MOOC, a massive open online course for my same class I teach, English 1A or first year composition. And this is a class taught by one professor with 400,000 students, and it's AI powered.
Oh, wow.
Well, I don't know what that means. I actually tried to take the course and then I got bored. I said, I'm not doing this. If I'd done research for today, I would have started it. But these were things I was seeing, not necessarily because the technical capacities were there, but because the ideology was there. The idea of efficiency being the most important value possible. And we know in many other professions that, well, in every profession, human beings are expensive. As a teacher, I need healthcare, pension, all this stuff. And also, I have a union, so I can be difficult. I and other teachers, humans are extremely inefficient. And so the dominant value, once you've moved out of education being a public democratic service and you moved it towards it being a consumer service, then you have the management logic, technocratic logic that to me inexorably leads to the replacement of teachers by machines that will not resist. Now, at the time, back in 2011 and 13, I had a lot of colleagues saying I was being kind of paranoid. And then, I kind of felt like I was. I was sounding an alarm that would make us rethink our course. But now these things are actually technically possible, and they're ideologically, I think, preferable to many in power. So as soon as the pandemic happened and we were on Zoom, I'm like, here it goes. Also, I did a lot of reading at that time, and Naomi Klein wrote a fantastic essay called The Screen New Deal. And she built that out of her wonderful work on disaster capitalism and the shock doctrine. So, just as when Hurricane Katrina happened and New Orleans got turned into this sort of free enterprise charter zone, my thought was, as soon as COVID is breaking out, this is going to be an excellent chance to like really instantiate these visions to capture public education. And I would argue that at this point, now having the book being out for over a year and having finished the book 2 years ago, I would say those forces are accelerating even further than I had anticipated.
So I have some follow-up questions because I'm sort of fascinated by the timing of this, both the timing of your ability to start this work at the start of lockdowns, as well as the sort of fortuitous timing of what you were teaching. So I'm really curious. You said you started this on March 13th, 2020, when your school shut down and everything went into lockdown. And I think we both live in states where our states chose to be very cautious and the lockdowns were pretty significant. I have no problem kind of confessing that I felt like I was kind of spinning in circles trying to figure out. I had taught online before, but it was like a summer class. It was certainly not under duress. It wasn't within a global pandemic. I got to plan it out with plenty of, on my own schedule kind of thing. How on earth did you narrate the present in the present to create this incredible text? Mostly I'm jealous and need some info here.
I would say the answer is sheer terror.
Okay, good to
boredom,
know.
a melange of terror and boredom. For me, this book with Pete was a work of graphic medicine. Now that I would like to say that I made up that term, but that is a genre of work that deals with medical issues. And as a cancer survivor, a longtime brain tumor survivor, which is a major part of the book, I found that the creation of art and narration really is a medicine to me. And so as soon as, we were going into the pandemic, immediately my creative engine started working to like try to clot what was going on and to try to understand what was going on. So I was reading voraciously, I was writing voraciously to try to work out for myself what's going on. And so I think that was some of it. I think the other part of it is I'd had a sabbatical right before and had been writing some things that had no direction. And it's sort of like, as soon as the sabbatical happened, as soon as the pandemic happened, all the things I had been kind of like thinking about that had been like little islands floating here and there, just suddenly kind of connected together. And I think part of it, frankly, was some form of luck, is that I'm teaching certain things that just really happen to hit it. Although the reason I was teaching those things, like E.M. Forster's work, is I was noticing that trend line. So I don't know, but thank you for that comment. I'll take it.
So to kind of connect to that also, um, when you were talking about the work that your students were reading right before the pandemic, and certainly I was thinking at the time in 2020 and have been now of some works from the distant past as well as the not so distant past. I think of, Emily St. John Mandel's Station 11, which was before the pandemic, but certainly when we still had, you know, like our digital technology, or even 2001 A Space Odyssey, which, like, let's be honest, that's Siri, right? Do you think, as a teacher, do you think it's a good idea to maybe go further back in time to better understand our present and our future? I think we get so caught up in today and like what's happening today, but maybe one way we could disentangle today is to go much further back.
Yeah, so that was like a nice softball to me, because I've been thinking about. I'm writing a piece right now about the Jewish mystical creature of the golem and its connection to AI. And so the golem is a creature that is created by a learned rabbi out of like markings on the head and incantations, and then this creature then does what it's supposed to do that the master wants it to do. But what do you think the golem ends up doing? Always, it, like robots of today, it always ends up going awry, because
Mm.
it's man attempting to play God. And so I started to think about this and reading about the golems. Now, the golems can't actually talk, so that's very different. But AI is sort of an unthinking thing that it supposedly does what you want it to do. And I really started thinking about this ancient mystical creature. Not saying that AI is mystical, it is not. And I think AI uh, funders and creators would like us all to think it's some magical entity when it is not. But I started thinking about it when I met my doppelganger. So, speaking of Naomi Klein, recently her book Doppelganger, which is fantastic, I was reading that and I discovered that I had like an AI golem doppelganger on ChatGPT. And so I don't know if you guys have seen this or not for yourself, but one of my students in class, we were experimenting with ChatGPT. I asked them to take their paper if they want. If they don't want to, they don't have to, and have it give them feedback and see if they like the feedback or not. So one student said in class, "Hey, Bessie, do you know that you're in here?" I said, what do you mean I'm in here?" He's like, "Well, there's a full biography of you." And then I asked it, will it grade a paper as you? And it offered to do that it would grade a paper in my spirit. Yes. And so I said, okay. And it gave a teaching philosophy for me, which actually was not entirely inaccurate, which was a little troublesome. And then later, not that at that time, later I fed it a couple student papers to see if it was similar or not, and it wasn't really similar. I would have graded them differently, but it gave 10 times the feedback in 1/100th of the time, and a
Mhm.
lot of the feedback was not bad.
Mm.
And I had students in class tell me that they often ask AI models or LLMs before they turn the paper in to grade it for them, right? And so here I met this sort of doppelganger fake version of myself, and I was like, how did this happen? And I realized I created it myself. Through everything I've published, I created my own doppelganger
For sure.
or double. So this is, to me, to your question, I did a roundabout way of looking at it. I think that some of the answers to the things that are happening now are within literature too, which a lot has been written about the doppelganger, the golem, or these entities that are uncannily like us but not us, or can do things based on our orders. And so I think that there's definitely a role, and as a literature professor, I love it, a role for uh, thinking through how literature and ancient works help us grapple with the emergence of this uncanny replica of humanity.
Yeah, I think it's a nice segue to something that we'd like to talk to our guests about on here, which is kind of what you were getting at there, right? Like many of us who are in the kind of critical media space or studying AI from one way or another, we're aware that the massive profits that are being made in this industry come from collecting our data, right, erasing our privacy, and then using that data to create these products or this doppelganger in this case. But what we find interesting on a personal level, and this is why we want to ask our guests this, right, is even knowing that there are often times in our lives we still use these tools, right? They are amazing feats from humans, right? Some of these things that these tools can do now were simply just unthinkable to most of us not too long ago. So we want to ask you your surveillance confession here, Adam. Can confess to us which of these tools do you use and you think, gosh, I know this is wrong, but gosh, I have to use this.
Oh, we're
tool.
getting all Catholic here.
Yeah.
All right. Well, maybe I should confess to Jesus bot. Apparently, there is like a Jesus bot somewhere in Europe. Anyways, yeah. I mean, I feel like so as an author, I feel like how do you promote your work or connect to it without the use of social media? And so I would say, or like having a website as well. Like I have a website with my work on it. I saw a lot of this doppelganger came from my own website and other things I've published. So it's people that are producing works of art or writing or scholarship in the world. And if we would like other humans to experience those things, I'm not, it's really hard to know how to not engage with it. Mm-hmm. I'm finding lately though, that quandary more and more easier to resolve. So I got off of X after Elon Musk's work with the incoming or now present fascist Trump government. But now all of the tech titans have sworn fealty to him. And so I'm now having to like myself really think about to what, and I don't have an answer at this particular point in time, but I do know some other graphic novelists I know, especially people in the arts who don't want their work used for replacing their artistic jobs. Like at what point, or is it now, do I need to move off of that? Now, I want to off of those platforms where it's not no longer useful. On the other hand, I wanted to say that in terms of usefulness, God, I would like AI to grade all my papers. And I just made a recent piece that's going to be in Inside Higher Education, which is, pondering that. I mean, paper grading, if you're doing it right, is such a laborious but important task. But a lot of it is quite mechanical. For example, as an English professor, I mean, I'm seeing run together sentences and topic statements, and many of these things are not matters of creativity. And so the reason why that's such an attractive option is not because I really want to use the AI, but because of the circumstances of education make it that teachers like myself, I'm teaching 4 full classes this term, have so many students that it's impossible to like do the things you're supposed to do within the time you have. And so the sort of factory model and factory ideology that sort of like Frederick Winslow Taylor sort of assembly line ideology, which most schooling is built on to, maximize the butts and seats, sort of makes me wanting to grade papers via AI rational. And it's also why I think students are attracted to using AI, right? Especially in the teaching of community college. My students have very complex lives, often where they're working, they're parenting, they're doing a million things, and they're not just going to class, and under that time pressure, and if they're just thinking it's all about me just producing a product, you can see why, this efficiency, to loop back to sort of an earlier part of the conversation, this efficiency for both students and teachers becomes the dominant value to the exclusion of learning and relationships.
Mm-hmm.
It's like no one is frozen.
Yeah, I know. We'll see if we can get him back. Maybe the mysterious they has already caught on to what we're doing
Yeah,
here.
that's what's happening. Uh-oh. Oh,
Uh-oh.
no one's back. He's not being
Oh,
taken hostage anymore.
Okay.
I
Okay.
wasn't, I wasn't frozen. I was just doing my, still face for the camera there.
Ah,
It was very, very effective.
very convincing. So a couple of years ago, I got a super weird email to my personal email. It said that, whoever sent it said that they knew what I was doing. They'd caught me. And they were going to let everybody know unless I gave them a certain amount of money. I don't even remember what it was in Bitcoin. And I was like, you know what? If you've caught me at anything, I don't even know what Bitcoin is. So this ship has sailed. But made the email super weird was that it was addressed to my dog. It's Dear Sancho, and I would have reprimanded him a little bit for using my computer without asking my permission and getting himself into all sorts of doggy trouble. Only he was also deceased. Um, so as familiar as I was at the time with, you're online, you're doing something, it captures it, it now sends you all that information because you want to learn about it further. The fact that I was getting emails addressed to my deceased dog surprised me a little bit. So I guess I'd like to ask you, have you ever experienced a particularly strange or surprising red flag while being tracked?
Well, I mean, I got a similar email to that one, but not addressed to my dog, but to me. You
Mm.
know, it must be sent to millions of people. I mean, I would say for me, the story I just told about about ChatGPT sort of having a sort of low fidelity likeness
Mhm.
of my professional career, and then its willingness to do the job that I do, I think that has really hit me in a way that's really uncomfortable, and has made me really start to think about, okay, what is it in this landscape that humans are for?
Mhm.
And I feel right now in this moment very much as I felt right when COVID happened, where I'm like, we are going into a new landscape. I don't think there's a returning. I mean,
Mm.
although you can see me on folks that are listening, you won't see me, but if you're online, you will see me in my office. I'm teaching fully face to face right now. I have no online classes. So I have returned, but we're in a completely different era
Yeah.
now, a different era in terms of numerous things. In terms of technology is infused in all of my classes, and in some ways it's made my classes better, I would say. I would say the workload is much more now because I feel like
Mhm.
responsible for the virtual, right? Also, mental health. This is something I covered in the work as well. I feel, and I was on the campus crisis team as the
Mm.
only faculty member there, or teaching faculty member, and that's part of the book as well, where I talk about that experience. That has persisted, where I still feel like in the classroom I'm seeing lots of anxiety and difficulty. And in this moment, with the emergence of AI and whatever new thing we're in, it feels very much like COVID. Like we're moving into a new space, and I and the students are all trying to figure out, like, where are we?
Yeah.
What's happening? And for me, I'm like, okay, like sometimes I'm like, okay, am I the horse and buggy driver and the car has come along?
Mhm.
Um, I don't know. I do think, though, there will always be human teachers, but the human teachers will be for the wealthy and the AI will be for the poor, because that would bear out the way that we have always done things.
Yeah.
The technology, I could see at my college, for example, or any college, you have a lot of first year English or math classes. And I would imagine if you're in a managerial position and you're looking at budget savings, that's very costly. And if you could get a contract with again, like that Duke's pilot program, where you could get a cheaper contract for one, or maybe you could pick your AI, your human teachers, and then the AI is running it. You could have, 2 or 3 English teachers for an entire college of 20,000 people to replace the 50 we have right now.
Right.
And so that is sort of my grave concern of where things will go, which is sort of rational. My more positive hope would be that the AI would be deployed in ways that is advertised always, that it would make our lives easier, and that it would grade the stuff that's annoying to grade, and then I could really focus on what I'm great at. But I just don't see that happening, given over the course of my 20-year career, the way efficiency always remains the number one value.
Yep, absolutely.
And so I don't know what's next, but I feel like we're all, just like COVID started, we're all entering into a new era. And I don't have the luxury of being a super ardent idealist in my classroom. I think this is the good thing about being a classroom teacher, where I'm working on the practice of writing and not just content. Like, I need to, meet students where they're at in some ways. And so it's really forced me to have to be also pragmatic within this moment. It is very challenging, to know what that means. And so again, I feel like, just like with March 13th, 2020, the sense of vertigo, where I'm like, I'm designing my course right now. I'm getting ready to teach. And I'm like, is this going to work? I don't know. I don't know if I have the tools to make it work, but I got to keep moving.
Right. Right. As the inefficient humans that we are. Thank you so much. This has been incredible. Can you tell us, you started at the top by telling us your website, but I'd love to have you repeat it again and tell people about what you're working on next and where they can find your work.
Yeah. So adambessie.com, adambessie.com. I haven't updated it super well recently, but there's a ton of comics I've made on various subjects there, including a chapter of going remote. And going remote, a teacher's journey it took me like 2 years to get it done with Peter, the wonderful artist.
Love Peter.
It'll take you like 30 minutes to read, which is one of the things about making something. And so I really appreciate having you guys on. Oh, and I forgot, or having you guys having me on. I'm on Instagram and Bluesky for now.
Okay.
By the time this comes out, I don't know. But you can look me up in all those platforms. So I really enjoyed this talk, and good luck on the show.
Thank you very much, Adam Bessie, for coming on this Eyes on Education episode of the Disinfo Detox. Thank you very much to my co-host, Allison Butler. It's always a pleasure to hang with you. And thank you very much to the audience for tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, and follow. Do all the things that make those tech overlords happy so we can keep bringing you the program. See you next time.
Hey, Detoxers. Thanks again for tuning in. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow Disinfo Detox wherever you get your podcasts. Detox complete.